can run around, I guess. At least can you follow it? Is it wide enough? Or no?
Holla ballers, and have I got a treat for you. Welcome to the King's Rest, the second of the two Mythic only dungeons in BFA, and this is a ride, my man. This was a good couple of hours to get through this one with a very coordinated full Mythic Raider group to get through this one. This was tough. This was really tough. Apparently there's been 3 versions of this dungeon. The first version wasn't too bad. People managed to get through that, so you might have seen this dungeon before on other channels. The second version, which is the one that I tried first when we did the Siege of Borealis, was broken beyond all belief. You're talking like my mage has like 68k HP. The debuffs were ticking off like 55k every second. It was chaos. They've redone it again. I would still wager massively overtuned. I would be very surprised if this dungeon went live anything close to what you're about to see in terms of like the damage numbers and whatnot. I would expect that to be drastically reduced because the tank was getting smashed, we were getting hammered, and it was like we had to do some crazy coordination to get through this thing. But still, what a fun dungeon. What an absolutely fun dungeon. And what's great about this is I can show you silly and fun done the right way. Because it was a big piece of feedback on Siege of Borealis. It's like, weren't you asking for silly and fun? And it's like, yeah, but this dungeon doesn't really fit the theme of what the silly and fun stuff is. That was my point there in the context of it. But in this dungeon, they have done some silly fun stuff, and it works perfectly well. It works perfectly well. It's really good fun. So let's get this out of the way straight up. First of all, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And a really weird location. The location to get into this dungeon is actually inside the instance that is a Tal d'Azur, but the live version, so not the instance version of the dungeon. So you can actually go into a Tal d'Azur on its own. It's in the world as a map, but it's not a dungeon, and you can go through the dungeon portal to actually do the dungeon version of it. In order to get into King's Rest, which is underneath the Tal d'Azur, you actually go into the standard static live version, which doesn't have any bosses or anything in it, and then there's a portal at the back there. Kind of think of it a bit like Zul'Gurub. So you can fly into Zul'Gurub on live. You can go down to Strongfall and Vale and go inside and mooch around. It's different to the dungeon version, but imagine there was then another dungeon inside there. So it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful inside. It is really gorgeous. Has the old day feel to it. Going down deep into this troll tomb, which is what King's Rest is, essentially, down to this troll tomb. First things first, you're really going to want to bring somebody who can remove Enrage. Enrage is a big thing. Druids can do it. Hunters can do it. We did it without, which was, again, to our folly and definitely cost us some time in here, particularly with the early trash. Most of it has Enrage. When it enrages, it basically kills the tanks. Like, that's how bad this dungeon is. Like, you're fighting for your life, having to pick and choose which spells need interrupting and which ones don't, because they're only going to hit the tank for like 60k, 60k, 60k. The next one's going to hit the whole group for like 300k. That one's the one that needs interrupting, so you've got to manage that. And then you've also got this trash that enrages. Some of it enrages based on HP, so you've got to be careful of that. And some of it enrages based on a timer, so you need to try and beat that. But standard stuff visually, as you go through here, you got some constructs, nothing we haven't seen before, and some undead liches that are casting some things from Shadow Doctors. So let's go into the first boss then. So you're immediately going to be presented with only one route to take. It's a super linear dungeon, but they have got some shortcuts in there. You're going to head off to your left, and then you're going to enter a room where we're going to see Zul. Okay, Zul is one of the bosses in Uldia. There's a big storyline involving Zul. Some of you have heard his name before. And then he's going to animate all this trash in the boss room for the first boss, which is the Golden Serpent. So as you work through that, this Golden Serpent is eventually going to spawn, and then you're going to deal with this boss. Mechanically, very easy. The difficulty we had with it is that it just kills you if you get anything wrong. It's like, if you don't play perfectly, pretty much, you get it wrong. Essentially, he's going to give you this debuff where he turns you to gold. It's called Golden Spit. So you get covered in this golden liquid. And then after a few seconds, that's going to drop into a pool of gold on the floor. And from there, periodically, he's going to summon an ad out of the gold. Now, that once you kill those ads, they just turn back into gold pools, and then when he does the summon again, he's going to summon an ad from every pool. So throughout the fight, you're going to get more and more ads to deal with. So our initial strategy with this was to, as I was the only ranged, was to have the melee and the tank and the healer, who was Dis, working on the boss, and I was going to just kill the ads off, right? So they were a non-issue. And what we did was just have people drop the pools in kind of the same spot, so all the ads would kind of hit a wall and then funnel into one nice smooth line. That wasn't effective, ultimately. I was one of the higher DPSs in there, so instead it made sense just to slow them and basically do it like Agramar, which is exactly what our DK said. I'm just going to Agramar this. If any of them get dropped wrong, I'm just going to grip them back into the pile, and essentially we'll keep Death and Decay with a big slow and Blizzard on them, and we'll just slow them down while we nuke off the boss. That works out perfectly. Whether that's intended, certainly when you think about Tyrannical, things like that, where the boss is going to be going on for a much longer period of time, hard to say. But considering the ads exponentially increase, it's likely to be how you deal with this boss. But super simple to start off with. If any of the ads reach the boss, their health shields him. So if you get like 4 ads or something shielding him, he gets like a full health bar back in terms of an absorb shield. There's nothing which you can do. So letting the ads hit the boss is just, it's game over, essentially. What was then interesting is immediately after that, we went into a Gauntlet Room. This is one of the hardest rooms we dealt with in the entire dungeon. Really weird. It bugged out on us at first, and we had to reset the dungeon, do the first boss again, and then start this whole sequence. Essentially, it's a room full of statues, which Zool will animate group by group. And they have some of the craziest and very, very painful mechanics. We're talking uninterruptible storms, which will pretty much two-shot you, healing ads, raptors that dive around and then start clawing at you, all sorts of crazy mechanics. We had a lot of deaths in this room, because obviously you don't know what's coming next, and then you've got to figure out what's dangerous in here. It's certainly a case of, having seen it once, we could probably one-shot this room pretty damn easily, because we know which are the dangerous ones, and we had to figure out a strategy for each and every pack in order to deal with them. So even though I'm saying this dungeon is difficult, I am confident at this point that if I took those same guys in there, we would one-shot everything and be done pretty quickly. It's a very heavy mechanics dungeon, but getting any of the mechanics wrong is... that's a problem. That's where you're going to get fucked up. And they punish you pretty severely. So there's an argument to be made that for a Mythic dungeon, maybe that's correct. But for Mythic 0, Blizzard tends not to want to go down that road. Mythic 0 or Mythic 1, some of you got touchy about that. I mean, does it matter? Is usually reasonably accessible. Whether or not they're going for a much earlier, steeper difficulty curve this time, there's definitely an argument to be made there. I would have still expected us to have cleared this much quicker, because there's no noobs in this group, let's put it that way. So second boss is up just after that room. So you go through this Gauntlet Room, do a little bit of trash on a bridge, and then you're straight into the next boss, Makimba the Embalmer. So they've taken the theme of the Embalmer, and they've also put you in this crypt, essentially. And this is silly and fun, because his main mechanic is locking somebody in a coffin. He locks you in a coffin, and the person in the coffin gets a new button, which is called Wiggle. So you get locked in a coffin, you got to wiggle. And one of the four coffins in the room will start shaking, and you have to click that one to release the player. It's beautiful. It's so funny, and it totally fits with the theme of what this boss should be doing. He's locking you in a coffin, and you would wiggle to get out of it. It fits perfectly, and it's funny, and it works. If you click the wrong coffin, it will summon an ad with a lot of HP who's going to chain cast an ability, and if this ability goes off, it dots you and it screws you up. He's also setting fire to the room. So basically, you're going to have... well, the way we did it was... me on one side of the room as a mage, we had the priest on the other side, and we had the boss pretty much in the middle. And as soon as one of us got entombed, it was like, right, find the right coffin. Which one's wiggling? It's this one's wiggling. Like, let the guy out. And at the same time, he runs to a coffin. He's going to try and open a coffin that is got an ad in it. He's trying to get the ads out, so you have to be very quick. So it's really fun. It's very cool. I enjoyed it a hell of a lot. I thought this boss was great. Absolutely adored this boss. Moving through, we got a lot of ghost trash, very difficult. A lot of berserkers, healers, stompers, things that were hitting the tank for about the auto attack on the trash was hitting the tank for like 70% of his HP through mitigation. Really tough stuff. And also, if you've been following the tank series, you'll be aware that magic damage is a big problem for tanks right now. Like, you can't really defend against it very well. And in this dungeon alone, there are lots of enemies that just chain cast magic into the tank. So there's not much I could do against this, right? I can heal it up, but I'm still taking the damage. And so the healer was like, Jesus. I mean, our healer was 350 something, I think, 354. Which, and there, for context, the group was like, I think he's the highest at 354, and I think the lowest was me at like 328. They dropped 340 loot. It's appropriately geared, if not over geared, right? The tank was also very over geared for it. And so you're then going to work through this until you hit the next boss. This is the boss that gave us the most trouble. It's the Council of Tribes. This boss cost us, I think, about 6 wipes, which doesn't sound a lot, but the run back is a bit of a pain in the ass. There is a shortcut in the term of a bat that will carry you to just before the second boss, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass run back. And we definitely had a DK control undead, one of the berserkers, because they stack a dot. It didn't overpower the dungeon by any means, but it certainly gave us a little edge. Probably did something like 300k more damage over the course of a fight, which is a fight doing, you know, a few million damage. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't like it didn't break the encounter, let me put it that way. So this is a council fight, the Council of Tribes. A weird one in terms of how they've tuned it, because the first two definitely seemed like the difficult ones, and the last one was pretty simple in how you dealt with it. You have to fight three members of this council. The first one has a series of casts of Lightning Bolt, which are very, very painful on the tank, and then one really long cast of Poison Nova. And if you let Poison Nova go off, it's game over, man. This is game over. So we coordinated with it, lined up perfectly for my ranged interrupt, so I would do the Poison Nova at the last possible second, buy as much time to DPS the boss as possible, and the DPSs and the tanks will coordinate the Lightning Bolts to get them down. But one of the other things it does is cast 4 totems at random locations in the room. They're always at the edge, so they're always very evenly spread out. But where they are, which ones are where, is always random. So you get 4 totems. One is a torrent totem that's going to rain down constantly on the room with pools, so you can't stand still. Another one is a thundering totem, which has a relatively long cast, but it interrupts anybody in the room if you happen to be casting. The third one is an explosive totem that has a very short cast time and does 50,000 damage to everybody in the room should it go off. Woo! And the fourth one was a Earth Shield totem that didn't heal the boss, but it did put an absorb on him constantly. It just chain spams an absorb on him, so you can't really do damage to him, but it doesn't heal him either. So you have to work out how to kill these totems. Interestingly enough, they also decided to make it so that you couldn't damage the totems properly. Like for the melee, only physical damage worked. And even then it was reduced. So if you had damage like the RDK had as like Scourge Strikes, which is half physical, half shadow, right? The shadow portion just didn't work. It didn't happen. For casters, it was like 50% damage on the totems, just so you couldn't nuke them down is what they're after. Is like you can't just nuke these things down. And so we had to very quickly reorganize everyone in the room super quickly, and we found that like killing the explosive totem first because that was the most dangerous, then killing the thundering totem because there's so much damage going out that the healer just can't be like, I need to stop casting now. And same for me, like I need to be casting constantly because my damage is being reduced. And then we'd worked on the Earth Shield totem because that could be dispelled off the boss and it could be purged off the boss. And then we left the torrent totem pretty much alone because it was avoidable damage. We just left that alone with a goal to transition him into the next boss before he spawns the second totems. Essentially, if he did 2 sets of totems, we considered that pretty much game over at that point. There's like dealing with everything going on and all the tank damage at the same time. It was like, we have to do totems again, we're probably screwed. The next guy was interesting because we wiped this guy a couple of times until we figured out what exactly he was doing. So this guy comes into the middle of the room, and what he does is a massive crash, an axe crash, right? Like an axe AoE. That if you get hit by it, you're pretty much dead. You get a bleeding debuff from the axe that it's ticking for so much damage, there's nothing you can do. But at the same time, he puts out 2 whirring blades, and these will fly out concentrically outwards from wherever they spawned. So once we got him into the middle, it became a very nice rhythmic routine of get out for the crash, avoid the bleed, wait a second until you can see where the blades are going, then move back into the middle because the blades are emanating away from that position, right? So once we got that, it was actually a very smooth sailing fight. Before that, where we didn't have the guy in the middle, the whole room got filled with whirling blades and then knocking you and fucking you up. And he also has a single target axe throw, which was almost guaranteed death without like pain suppression or spam shields or something on that character, because it just does so much damage. And there's nothing you can do to avoid it. It's coming for you. Like, you could ice block it off, sure. But it was very dangerous. And once we decided to bloodlust this phase and just get it out of the way, which then led us on to the last guy. So you go through all that, and then you have another guy to go through. But the last guy is actually relatively simple. He just did one massive smack on the tank, as pretty much everything in this dungeon does. You're talking like 70-80% of the guy's HP. It's like every time he wasn't topped, we were like, oh, he might die. And also an ability where he'll mark somebody, and you have to all line up. So he charges through you. I think it's called barrel through. So you all split the damage as he tries to reach that, because it hits for like 300,000, I think, on the final target. But if the more people in the middle of it, the better, which splits the damage between all of you. So that was the final one. So a very coordinated, tight group of effort here. Lots of coordination for one boss. Really needed some organization to get this done. Like, who's interrupting what? Where are we going? What order are we doing totems in? Figuring this stuff out was super fun. Like I say, I think we could go back in there and one-shot it now, because we know exactly our routine in order to get it done. But that was pretty cool. Which then led into the big cutscene about the final boss, Dazar, which turned out to actually be the easiest boss in there. Only one trash mob, which is a Shadow of Zool just before that respawns, and probably a bug. I submitted this as a bug. He respawns if you wipe on the boss, and you have to do this again, which is really irritating because he's not a particularly fun mob, and he just chain casts into the tank and just wrecks the tank. Anyway, our final boss, Dazar, really awesome room. So gorgeous. So gorgeous. And the story with Dazar is it's pretty funny. So he's got lots of mechanics which are based on the Zool boss itself in Uldia. For those of us who tested it, it was like, oh, I kind of get this. So what you've got is one debuff on one guy that's going to cause an AoE, which does less damage the further you are away. He's also going to cast tornadoes at certain people, so they need to be put somewhere else, because those tornadoes give you a massive debuff that lasts for ages, and you don't want to get hit by that. At the same time, he's got, like, similar to Mandakir from Zul'Gurub, boys bringing in some raptors that do different things. So you've got raptors that are going to be similar to early in the dungeon, that are going to jump behind you and start shredding, and that can kill you. On top of that, he's going to spawn another raptor later in the dungeon that's going to put a dot on you and AoE fear you instantly. We thought maybe you could line a sight or something, but the cast is so fast, like, no chance, man. We were reading it, we were like, I'm pretty sure we could probably line a sight that fear, right? Something like that, because it's a big circular room. Not a chance. And then his final ability is he circles the room with raining spears, and as you can see from here, like, it turned out once we scienced it, yeah, I could have run through this, but at the time, we just pulled it. We had no idea. So I was like, right, it very much reminded me of one of them disaster movies where you've got like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Dwayne the Rocky Johnson running right on the edge of the cliff that's collapsing under his feet, because I was like, oh no, like I couldn't get away from this damn thing. Looking back on it, I could have easily just gone the other way and taken very little. It turned out it did very little damage, or whether it's not supposed to or whatever, and actually just DPS from the other side or blinked through or something. But at the time, it was a case of run for your fucking life as this thing's coming. And simultaneously, you've still got everything else going on. You still have tornadoes spawning. You still have this debuff where you have to... So you're all running in a big circle around the room, and you still have this debuff that needs to be put somewhere far away from everyone else. So it was like, tuck into the middle, fucking get to the edge, do all that kind of stuff. Which, in a panic of only ever seeing that phase once, like I say, we did like an accidental pull first, which led to a wipe, but we killed it on the next go. It was totally fine. We just killed the boss, and it wasn't a worry. I would have liked to have done this boss a couple more times just to make sure I could sign some more stuff. But overall, what a fun dungeon. Absolutely gorgeous. Really cool bosses. Besides the first one was a little boring. Interesting ideas for trash. Not a lot of trash, but trash that needs some organization and coordination. I'm more than happy with that. I would rather do less but more interesting trash than just loads of trash mobs. Kind of the opposite of the Motherlode dungeon in BFA, which is just the same trash over and over again, and it's not particularly interesting. This is way less trash, but more interesting trash that keeps you engaged. They almost feel like mini-bosses. So you're having this back-to-back encounters all the time. So look forward to this one. Can't wait to see what the live version's like. I hope they don't gut it, because it felt like we were doing like a Mythic 15 or something. It definitely felt like we were doing quite a high Mythic Keystone with Fortified and Tyrannical, because the bosses had a lot of HP. But fun. Very, very fun. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't seen the other Mythic Only Dungeon, check out the Siege of Borealis video, which is the other one, which is a lot easier than this one. Way easier. I think that one took us about an hour. This one took us like twice as long. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.